Attention Big Blue Nation. Welcome to Kentucky Basketball Then and Now, a unique exploration of America's paramount collegiate hardwood program, featuring anecdotes and memories from the 1950s forward to the very latest on everything UK hoops. Kentucky Basketball Then and Now seats Wildcat fans front court and center. Here's Lexington native and SEC standout Gary Waddell and Owensboro native and Rupp Front senior student manager Mike Harreld.
Good afternoon, folks. We appreciate you joining us. This is Mike Harreld. Gary Waddell is out today, but we're lucky to be joined by Tom Gray, who is an expert in Kentucky basketball and all the statistics. He's amazing. I think you'll really enjoy him. I always do. So today we're talking about the season that just ended. A very disappointing season for us Kentucky fans who had some illusions of grandeur early on, that we had a really good team and that Coach Cal would be able to get them to play together and that we would at least have a real shot at the championship. It's been a long time now. 2012, I think, isn't it, Tom, is the last?
That's the last one. Yeah, we got close a couple times, but close don't count in Kentucky.
Right. So it's to me, I was thinking about this over the last few days, that we've entered into one of these periods that happens every now and then at Kentucky, where we go into what I call a malaise. We just can't quite get out of it and get back to what we want to be. We were that way. My first few years at Kentucky, when we had Cotton Nash and Ted Deacon, and then the year that they were gone before Pat and Louie got there. Those 3 years, particularly my junior year, I think we were 13 and 13. There was a lot of enthusiasm about the team and support and stuff, but we just didn't have it. And in fact, my senior year, then we were supposed to be finished fourth in the SEC, and thanks to Coach Bill Hall's preconditioning program and Coach Rupp and Coach Lancaster really renewing their focus, and then the leadership of Conley and Cron, and supported by Pat Riley, and of course the great shooting of Louis Dampier. We broke out of that malaise, and as you know, went all the way to the final game. And then we had several years where the team was expected to be just right back up there again, and they were very, very good, but they didn't quite ever get there. And then we ran into some years where, again, we were in the malaise, and then Coach Patino got us out. But Tom, you know a lot of that even better than I do. What do you think about what I'm saying? How are we going to get out of this malaise, I guess, is the question.
I wish I knew. Part of it is complicated now because all the new rules. Transfers can leave whenever they want, play right away wherever they go. They can literally get recruited with this NIL money, and there's sort of a competition between schools. We can pay you $200,000. No, we can pay you $500,000. The shooting guard on Miami, Florida this year, made the Final Four, made $800,000 in NIL money to go to Miami. So it's hard to compete with $800,000. And that's pretty much the reason. So that makes it tough. The fact that we have a number one rated recruiting class coming in is really good, but UK's success rate with the first year that the number one recruits show up on campus, I did some reckoning and looked back to when I first started following the Cats in the mid-'60s. I came up with the fact that we've signed the number one recruited class 17 times since 1966, and only once did we win an NCAA championship with the number one recruiting class as freshmen or sophomores back in the day, and that was 2012 with Anthony Davis as a once-in-a-generation type player. He's one that we don't have too many of those. He's a Dan Issel or he's a Jamal Mashburn, that kind of thing.
Right. And so to me, One of the things that tells me is that the focus needs to be changed, at least broadened, and that, the focus that Coach Cal has seems to me, like I'm not there every day watching, obviously, is recruiting. And sure, you've got to get good players, but then we've got to develop them and retain them. He makes a big deal about how anybody that wants to go pro, he'll talk to them, and if he thinks that's the right thing, he'll tell them to do that. And I agree with that, but there's got to be some way to keep some experience on the team. Maybe he needs to sign a few players that are instead of grade 1, a grade 1A, and will stay around 2 or 3 years, because it's pretty clear to me the teams that are doing well have some players that have been around a while.
Yeah. I think we'll never see in our lifetime, or maybe never ever see anything like UCLA in the 60s or 70s, or Adolph Rupp in the 40s and 50s, when he literally dominated college basketball year after year after year. That just won't happen anymore. But by the same token, I don't think we'll stand much longer for what's been happening in the last few years, because it might say Kentucky on the front of the shirt, but they're not playing like the Kentucky that we've all come to know and love. The magic is gone. Pitino had the magic. Calipari had the magic the first half of his time at UK. Joe Hall had some magic in the late 70s. Coach Rupp, as far as I was concerned, had magic most of his career. But even he stumbled in the early 60s, as you said, Mike, that those teams in the early 60s were good but not great, and certainly not what Kentucky fans had come to expect.
Yes, that's definitely true. And we're at a plateau where we're just another team.
Exactly.
We're not even, if you started naming the top teams, anybody that's paying attention, you got to say Connecticut. And then after that, you're going to hear a bunch of teams: Duke, North Carolina, Louisville, perhaps Kentucky. But we're just in that kind of second tier with no real excitement or promise. Even though we try to recruit a great class every year, it's not going anywhere. It's like buying the best seeds and planting them, but the crop we're getting is just not, the results are just not there.
I think you've probably heard this saying, but the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And it seems to me that whatever Calipari and his staff have been doing is not producing the results lately. So they got to tweak it somehow, or do something different, or have a different focus, or whatever it might be. But Kentucky fans, it's just not that we're not going to accept the kind of things we've seen in the last 5 years. We've had some good teams. We've had some, in one case, we had the worst team in a century with 9-16. That's just unheard of at Kentucky.
Yeah. It's really been embarrassing, because I wear my Kentucky visor around, and people used to come up and talk to me about, the expectations for next year and how super the program is. And now they just look at you like, why are you wearing that thing?
Yeah.
We've just lost it. And I think the problem is all the way to the top. It's just me observing from afar, but I don't think the president of the university understands the support he can get from the community if, in fact, he produces a terrific basketball team. I think he's way focused more on, maybe you'd argue that things he should be, but academics and all the correct political correctness stuff, and diversity and ESG, and all those things are important. But in Kentucky, all of those things typically take, and just the way it is, whether you like it or not, a backseat to how is the Kentucky team playing. And we're just not doing it. So you got he ought to be pushing them. And then I think the athletic director, who's won all kinds of awards and stuff, is not really getting the job done.
It doesn't seem like he is. That's for sure. You mentioned about Kentucky if you go anywhere in the world and say the word, I'm from Kentucky, or just say the word Kentucky, they think of three things. They think of Kentucky Fried Chicken, they think of the Kentucky Derby, and they think of the Kentucky Wildcats basketball team.
Right.
Anywhere in the world. I can wear my UK gear. I've had people comment in Australia when I was there for the Olympics. I've had people comment in Europe. I've had people comment all over the world. I was one time on vacation in Hawaii, and I was wearing a Kentucky shirt and a Kentucky hat. This man and woman came out to me and said, "Are you a Kentucky fan?" And I got to talk, and I'd seen the box score in the paper that morning, and I rattled off who had how many points. Turned out they were Kyle Macy's aunt and uncle. So they were pretty surprised that on Waikiki Beach they would get a game score report from a UK fan, but that's kind of the way it was.
Right.
We're all over the world, and I've had this experience all over the place wearing something Kentucky oriented, and I don't think you'll get the same reaction now. Whether it's a generational thing or I think it's results. If we were having the results we had 10 years ago, I think it'd be hopping and bopping just like it was.
Yes, I do too. And so I think they've made in my judgment, obviously I'm maybe the only one thinking this, but they made an egregious mistake signing Calipari to a lifetime contract.
I agree. Lifetime contracts are rarely good because you lose the incentive to get better.
Right. And that wasn't necessary. I mean, you could, I think, with a little creativity, and you'd have to have a couple of lawyers working with you and stuff, but you could get a contract for Coach Cal or somebody else that you wanted to keep that had a lot of built-in incentives that would, assuming he was reaching certain goals that you could set, like getting to the Final Four every 3 years or whatever you wanted it to be, then, his contract would renew another year or two or whatever. But right now, so if we don't like what's going on, what is the average fan going to do about it? Just kind of go somewhere else. And I think that's going to be a real detriment to the university because the legislature listens to their voting base. And when the voting base turns off on the University of Kentucky, you'll have to look a little bit to see it, but you'll see that the impact is not good. So I don't know what they're going to do. They've got themselves in a real box.
Yeah, they're going to look foolish no matter what they do, and we might have to take a little medicine for a year or two to fix it. As far as I'm concerned, we're in a bit of a mess, probably next to the mess of the late 1980s with the recruiting scandal and all that sort of stuff. I'd say this is the biggest mess we've been in other than that one in my lifetime.
Yes.
I had full confidence in Adolph Rupp that he might have an occasional bad year, but he would get it squared around because he was darn good at what he did. The best ever, without much doubt, as far as I'm concerned. And we're not going to have another Adolph Rupp. It doesn't mean we should accept what we've seen lately. It's unacceptable to a Kentucky.
Right. And I mean, I'm hoping the media will get on them and, what are you going to do to fix this? But the media seems to be gotten very politically correct, so maybe they're not going to do it. But it's taken a program that everybody in the state had tremendous pride about and just pushed it down to be just another thing. And maybe that's what they want. We don't want to be outstanding in basketball. We want to focus on hiring 2 more physics professors, which, you certainly need physics professors. I'm not knocking that, but the uniqueness of what made the University of Kentucky great is gone. An example I've mentioned once or twice before. I was in 2008 was in China. They were busy preparing for the Olympics, and but my wife and I went to the Great Wall of China. And if you've ever been there, it's definitely worth a trip. It's not a wall; it's actually a road that goes for 2,900 miles, but over every kind of terrain you can imagine. But as I'm walking along, observing, and of course there's other people, tourists there, some guy comes up because I'm wearing my Kentucky visor and he doesn't even introduce himself. He just starts talking to me about what a great team they had last year and whether they were going to be any good this year. It was just kind of like the secret fist bump or something that the average Kentucky fan reacted to each other in that way.
Yeah, we've all had that experience. I had an experience somewhat like that in Australia for the Olympics. At the time, my stepdaughter was on the women's Olympic team for basketball. So we stayed in the same hotel as the men. And Tubby Smith was actually a coach that year. But first morning, I happened to ride down the elevator with him going to breakfast. I was an early riser, so was he. Most people were still asleep. So the elevator doors open up. We're in the lobby, and there's 50 or 100 people waiting for Tubby Smith to come down out of the elevator and cheer, and they sing the fight song, and he signs autographs in Australia, 10,000 miles away. And how those fans even found out what hotel he was in, goodness only knows, because it wasn't publicized, and it wasn't in Sydney, it was in a suburb. Somehow they found out, and they were there. This is 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and when I was much younger and we didn't have the telecommunications and internet and stuff we do today, friends of mine who lived in Florida would drive to the highest spot in Florida, which is kind of hard to find sometimes, and sit there during the game because that's the place they could get WHAS 840 on the radio the best.
Yeah.
Maybe some people are still doing that. After the last few years we've had, it's hard to do that. And so I don't know, but somebody needs to put some real pressure on the university, on the president, the athletic director, and Coach Cal. What are you going to do different? For instance, I think Coach Cal is obviously a good recruiter. He may be one of the best that's ever been. But what he needs to then evaluate is, all right, well, how do I take this terrific raw material and really develop it even more and make it into a team? And he may think he does a good job of that, but I think the results show that it's not getting done anywhere near as well as it should be. So he needs to get some help, some assistance, and staff that will help develop that. And it's just like any other business or sport. If you've got an all-star halfback in the football team, you're going to work to get that person the ball. We got to find a way to work to develop these people and to get their attitude right. And we got to deal with NIL. I think the players are less motivated. Is again, I'm observing from afar, but it just doesn't seem like there's quite that edge that there used to be. So
that's for sure. Well, definitely, I don't know I'm not a basketball coach, wouldn't have a clue, but I can tell from results that whatever he's doing is not working. I'm particularly dismayed with the Shaden Sharp last year, showed up on campus, got a scholarship, practiced for free all year, and then off he went to the NBA. We got nothing out of it. And we didn't get much different this year with Ugonna Oyenso. He played a little bit. He got a scholarship all year. Now he's off to somewhere else when he's really going to start getting good. So, and that's been his the last few years of recruits. I bet way more than half of them have left either by transfer or to try to play in the NBA from his recruiting classes. And you just can't have that kind of churning turnover. And you can't build a team from scratch every year. Nobody can, nobody could, nobody does.
Yeah, and so we got to figure out how other teams, everybody has NIL, everybody has some turnover, but how are they managing it to make it much less disruptive and actually take a catalyst of a real core group and turn them into a real contender? It's just, I don't know. It's a new day from guys like me that were around in the past before NIL and those kind of things. I mean, the worry back then was that fans would be paying the players illicitly and get us all on probation. Now they can pretty much pay them whenever they want to, but it's sort of taken away the incentive, I think. That
definitely. I see a real problem with the coaching staff too. A lot of turnover in the staff here lately. Back in your days, Mike, Coach Rupp was the coach. He was going to be the coach. You knew he was the coach. Harry Lancaster was the assistant, and he became later on the AD. But for years and years and years, Harry Lancaster was the assistant, did a lot of the in-game coaching kind of stuff. And then you had a recruiter, Joe Hall, for the latter part of Coach Rupp's tenure. But there were some other recruiters. And there was a part-time recruiter named Donald Butler, Whack Butler.
Oh yeah, I knew Don Butler. He was from Owensboro.
Yeah.
And he of course the rules were different then, but one of the things Coach Rupp and he worked on and didn't work out, but they really tried hard, was they rented an apartment in New York across the street from Rick Barry's home. And it was Quack lived there, and it was his job to get to know Rick Barry and to try to convince him to come to Kentucky.
Yeah.
It didn't work, but that was the intensity of the recruiting. But then once they got them, then they would, the saying when I was there, and I think what's been true pretty much over the years, is that if you went to Kentucky, certainly under Adolph Rupp, but under Patino and others that have been great since then, if you were good, they would make you great. If you were great, they'd make you an All-American. There was the expectation that there would be continued development, and it's kind of like when a slow day in the news now, the media will write stories that the average American growing up, say, is now 20 years old, is probably not going to do as well as their parents did because our economy is not as good. And that may be true or not, but that's the kind of story. Well, I think it is true right now. We don't have a way to create expectations that are really going to push everybody. So
I hope they can figure something out, because Kentucky was so magical. Kentucky basketball was so magical, so special growing up. I really became a fan as a teenager. My next door neighbor was a freshman at UK the year that the Runts played, and he kept coming home on the weekends, telling me how good the team was, and I ought to start following them. And the first game I ever listened to on the radio was at Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt was as good as we were that year. That we were number one, they were maybe number 3, something like that. And
that was 2 barn burner. Yeah, they were really good.
We cleaned their clock in Nashville. I remember listening to Kaywood on the game, beat them 15 points.
Yeah,
and that was quite a nice win. And the first ball game I ever saw was the next year, was a freshman game in Cincinnati when Issel, Casey, and Pratt played. That was fun, seeing Joe Hall coach. So those are memories that I'll have for the rest of my life. Things that I saw, and I can still remember plays from that game in 1967. The things that Issel did, or Casey did, or Pratt did, or all the players. I remember Joe Hall rolling up his program and gesturing at the players. And as soon as they make a mistake, he'd pull them out. Didn't matter who it was, and that kind of stuff. And so those are a kid in Kentucky growing up then. That was magic. But we don't have any magic right now.
No, we don't have. The other thing, it doesn't seem to me like that during the game we don't have the ability to make adjustments or to call plays. It's all what Coach Cal calls the dribble drive, and they come in the front court and somebody tries to make something happen. And that's not all bad, but it's better, I think. Coach Rupp's approach, and I think later Joe Hall, and even Patino wanted you to shoot it if you were open. That was for sure. But to run a basic offense so everybody knew what was going on, but then if you got a step on your man or something, break for the basket, and you could take advantage of it. But there was a basic structure, and everybody knew what was going to happen when they went into front court. And now it just seems like we don't know what's going to happen. Somebody's just got the ball dribbling, and maybe they'll run a little loop where the 3 or 4 of them loop around. But for the most part, it's just somebody taking the ball and seeing what they can do with it.
You probably remember, Mike, back in the day, every time Kentucky first got the ball in a basketball game, they would run the guard around play. I think it was number 3 play. Right. And that was designed to test whether the opponent was going to play a zone defense or not. So Coach Rupp would come up with that play, and they would run it to perfection. And those kind of things seem to be missing now. There doesn't seem to be any organized structure. It's just run down the court, see what you can do, and if you can't do it, see if somebody else can do it. And there's no strategy. Even when he calls a timeout, he doesn't come in with a really good play or something to do. Kansas State did a play on us where they faked running everybody down the floor and just threw it into their star player, and we forgot about him. So I think the other coaches maybe have gotten ahead of Cal or caught up with him or something.
Yeah, or back to the contract. There's not the incentive. Doesn't really matter. And you could say that about anything in a college basketball game. It doesn't matter. Well, Coach Rupp's philosophy, which is mine, is in the bigger sense of the picture, maybe it doesn't matter who wins on a given night, but the reason you keep score is that most people really do care, and they want to know who won and why. We just don't have that drive, that sense of urgency. I guess might be the right term. I'm not sure. So
I don't know when it started, but it certainly kicked in full steam here the last few years. Maybe it started after 2015 when we had what I thought was a much better team in Wisconsin in the Final Four. We were undefeated. We lost to them. If we'd gotten beat by another team of our caliber, that's one thing. I mean, it happens. But if you get beat to a team that you should beat, and especially when you have a lead on them late in the game, you got to close the deal.
I agree. That was a very disappointing loss, and I think you're right. I think it kind of marked, looking back at it. Everybody's got 20/20 hindsight, but I think it marked a definite point where we've just lost. We've gone downhill since then.
Yeah, and something's got to be done different. And I'm sure Coach Cal would like to be better, but liking to be better is not enough. You got to take some steps to make yourself better. I have no answer for it, but the last year or so has been quite disappointing to me because it just one player after another is leaving out the door, and we've lost 2 or 3 to the NBA and 2 or 3 to transfer already, and there's probably 2 or 3 more going. We won't have enough unless we get some guys in the transfer portal. We won't have enough people to run a 5-on-5 scrimmage next year.
Yes, I probably should have studied it closer, but right now, if you said to me, who do we have that's going to be one of the starters for next year, I'm not sure I could name anybody right now. Everything is such a jumble, and such a variables exist all over the place as to who's going to stay and who's going in the transfer portal and who's going to the NBA, and then you can go for the NBA draft, but not sign with an agent, and so you can come back. So even though somebody said they're going to go try their luck with the pros, they might still come back. So it's very uncertain. And I think that steals a lot from the fans, because if people like you and I that are very interested can't really tell you, who's going to be on the roster next year, at least the top 5 or 6, that just leaves a big void.
It does indeed. Yeah, I'm sure the Runts were a bit of a surprise to themselves, but other than that, you had a good feeling when Kentucky was going to be really good the following year, and you had another feeling when maybe they'd be okay but not great, that kind of thing. But you had some sense of, we got these recruits coming in, we got these guys coming back, those guys graduated. We don't have that anymore. We got this year's team. We might only have 1 or 2 or 3 back, and we might have 5 recruits, and we might or might not get transfers. And then it's somebody's job to make all those into a cohesive team and to beat the other teams that we play. So it's a different world, but that doesn't excuse that we want similar results. We want really good Kentucky level results, not just Bellarmine results or Western Kentucky results or something like that.
Right. And it could be, maybe it's just gotten a whole lot harder. I mean, now that I've lived around the country, a lot of places, I grew up in Kentucky, and still have some family there and love Kentucky. But if you were looking around at a place to go to school and you really were looking for nice weather, you probably wouldn't pick Kentucky. So there's got to be a reason for them to go to Kentucky, and as opposed to Miami, for instance. I'm sure it gets hot in the summer, but the weather, generally speaking, in Florida is a whole lot better than Lexington. So, and with all the money, although I don't think we're going to be outspent. I think we could raise the NIL money, although there's been some discussion that, and I'm not sure where it is at the moment, but there was a lot of uncertainty about how aggressively Kentucky was going to use the NIL program at first. Obviously, they did a pretty good job this year with Sheboy. I think he got well compensated, and I think the money's there. If Coach Cal needed $2 million to put on some superstar, I think he could do it. Now, if he gets 2 or 3 of those done and nothing happens and they don't turn out, then maybe the faucet would turn off some.
Yeah, that's another thing the players notice. Yeah, they like the money, but they also want to be better when they leave Kentucky than when they came to Kentucky. And I'm not sure that's happening with some of these high profile recruits that we've got in the last few years. I don't think they're better going out the door. And if you look at Coach Calipari's players in the NBA, the first half of his UK career, his players were stars in the NBA. And now, not so much. They're barely making NBA rosters, if that. They're playing in the G League. They're playing in Europe. They're playing somewhere else. And a handful are making it to the NBA, and none of them are stars. In the last few years, I'm talking.
Right. So who is I guess Anthony Davis is certainly somebody that was, of course, he was the reason we won in 2012.
Yep.
And he's certainly been a star, although I don't know that he's been on a NBA championship team yet.
Maybe one, but not more than that.
Right.
I don't follow the NBA that close, so he might have been on one, but he's the best, most talented, whatever you want to call it, player that Cal has signed at Kentucky, and maybe at any of his schools, because he's a once in a generation type player. Or something.
Yes. Oh yeah. I remember the start of that year. My wife and I went up to Lexington and watched the North Carolina Kentucky game, and it went down to the last 30 seconds, we had I think a 1 or 2 point lead, and North Carolina had the ball, and they went to their best player there in the middle. I can't remember his name, but when he tried to shoot, somebody that I had sort of heard the name but hadn't focused on yet was named Anthony Davis, got the block that won the game.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the pattern that was set for the year. The other thing that's going on that I just really get aggravated about is they don't seem to put the intensity on defense. The 2012 team that won it all, you could pretty well count that somewhere in the game there was going to be an 8 to 10 minute period of the game, say about a fourth of the game at least, where the other team just didn't score.
Yeah, you got to shut them down for a period like that, and then you got the game in hand.
Right, and we just don't. Every now and then we'll make some really good defensive plays, but in general we're not. I think if I were a average offensive player in college today, going up against Kentucky wouldn't put a lot of fear in my heart. I don't think their defense is very terrifying.
Take for example this the point guard from Kansas State. Fine, really good player, but I can just remember Coach Rupp saying something like this. He identified the number of the player and saying, "You get on that man because he's going wild." When a guy's scoring 30 points or 20 or 30 points on you, do something different. Put 2 guys on him. Do something. You can't let him score 30 points on you and hope to win.
And defense is where the intensity shows up.
Yeah.
Everybody likes to get the ball and drive aggressively to the basket. You got to really be watching to see that one team is slightly better than the other at a cut or something, but it becomes real obvious quickly who's playing defense and who isn't. And we just have lapses, where we'll play defense 2 or 3 times, and then we'll have 4 or 5 times where we didn't.
The '96 team, people don't give credit for how good a defensive team that was. Pitino got guys like Mercer and Antoine Walker, who were noted offensive players, and even Derek Anderson to a certain extent, to play defense. They played fierce defense. That's what won them some games. That's how they beat UMass the second time around. That's how they beat Syracuse in the final, with a fierce, strong defensive effort. So even though Pitino was famous for the press and the high-flying, high-scoring games and stuff, he had his players play defense and stop the other team. You got to stop the other team. You can't outscore them every time. You got to stop them sometimes.
Right. And in fact, that's how he got a lot of his points, was that he would get a steal, like a loose ball, and then they'd get it in the front court quickly. And before the defense could set up, somebody would shoot a 3. And he was very demanding that when they got it in front court and they were within shooting range to shoot it. He amazed me when that first started happening, because the way I had been taught was that you generally didn't shoot the basketball until somebody was underneath to rebound in case you missed. And his approach was that was totally irrelevant. Just get the ball in the front court, get it where you can have a decent shot and shoot it.
Yeah.
And he would take people out of the game and give them a lecture if they turn down those shots.
Kentucky seemed to have a lot of guys like that this year that played pretty good minutes, but hardly ever scored. Maybe a couple free throws, maybe a layup, maybe not. And you got a guy playing 20 minutes to get 1 layup and a couple free throws. It didn't make any sense to me. So we've probably gone on and on long enough, but both of us recognize that what we're seeing lately is not right. It's not Kentucky basketball, and something has to change.
Yeah. I would suggest to the fans that are listening to this that they verbalize their displeasure if they agree with us, and write to the president, write to the media, get some attention on this, because I think the the more you do that, the more the legislature responds, and there's a whole lot of subtle ways where the budgets get cut when people are not really behind you.
So, yeah, because at the end of the day, we're a university more than a basketball program. The basketball program makes the university stand out, but we're still a university. We still educate students and make young men and women into adult men and women with careers and so forth. So the basketball program has contributed to that, but not lately.
That's right. And it is very important. I taught for a semester up there in 2019, and I could see these students coming in to the business school and into the accounting program and see them start to mature and develop as adults and get the business sense that they teach there at the business school. It was very gratifying for what the university was doing for the average person. So it's a great thing for the state of Kentucky, but it can be, what we're saying is even better if we can keep this program going. You don't make yourself better by going backwards and down to the average. You gotta stay above it. Yeah. So maybe next week we can, or so, if things begin to settle down. I'm not sure, and we'll try to find out exactly when the portal operates. I know right now players have the option to join the portal. I'm not sure how long that goes on before then, what exactly happens, but at some point it becomes clear, okay, you have joined the portal, this school has offered and you've accepted a scholarship, and so you're now going to be with that team next year. Yeah. Right now, I think I don't think anybody knows where anybody is for sure.
Yeah, it's just the process just starting. I kind of think it's sometime in May, but I don't know for sure. It'd be just guessing. So the portal makes it's another curveball, makes it more difficult. Back in the old days, you had preseason, regular season, postseason, recruiting season for the 4 seasons in Kentucky. And now there's NIL and there's transfer portal and there's NBA draft review, and maybe I'll stay in, but maybe I won't. And there's just so much uncertainty.
Right, which makes it very, very difficult for the fans.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I'm interested, but a lot of times I don't have time every day to read whatever the latest development is. But things, all of a sudden you hear somebody join the portal, and then, or occasionally now they'll join the portal but then back out. And I think it's still true. Once you get a scholarship, unless you leave, you have the right to that scholarship. Now they can make it difficult on you, and you might decide not to stay. But anyway, everything is just much more uncertain, which doesn't help the average fan to get very excited. But we appreciate our folks listening today, and hope that they'll be as disappointed and as upset as we do, and verbalize some of that, and maybe get the right people at the university to get some focus on this.
And let's also wish Gary Waddell get well soon, and whatever ailment he's got that's affecting his voice, that it goes away, and he'll be back with us next week. Because I first started talking UK basketball with Gary in the summer of '67. That's how far our friendship goes back. So he's a good fella. He knows a lot, working hard, good family, good folks. So I hope he feels better and get him back here.
Yes, I agree with that. We missed him today, so we'll hope that he'll join us next week, and as we hope that our fans also will.
Yep.
Kentucky basketball then and now. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to Kentucky Basketball Then and Now. Mixed by sensational audio expert Daniel Dottridge of Atlanta Podcast Recording, with web hosting by Buzzsprout. On behalf of hosts Gary Waddell and Mike Harreld, go Big Blue.